On the whole, I'd rather be dead than alive. While I've found life somewhat rewarding regarding what I think of as the sublime delights, that kind of cerebral euphoria one can reap from the indulgence of the intellect and creative faculties, I find it generally lacking in purpose or hope. I suppose it takes a great deal of arrogance to assume that we were put on this earth to enjoy it, but unless we do enjoy it, what purpose could life yield? I suppose to figure out the purpose of life, we can look at what life actually does, and it turns out that life's own agenda consists of literally nothing more than simply perpetuating itself. It's interesting that people spend so much time looking for life's purpose when their entire psyches are built around this very obvious singular desire, and they live every moment of their lives in some way doing their part to fulfill it, constantly inflating and deflating their lungs to fuel this electrochemical machine. But this purpose does not satisfy because it is circular. Circular premises do not explain anything. So the mind naturally asks, why is life's purpose to perpetuate itself? What purpose is gleaned from that purpose? Some people think it's an accident, others think it was a conspiracy. But anyhow, the fact that people cannot simply be content with life as it is demonstrates that there's something wrong with life. The fact that people cannot be happy unless they have a reason to be happy really demonstrates that the purpose of life isn't to be happy at all, which means that people who look for meaning in life in order to find happiness are missing the point. Happiness is only an instrument among many others that are all employed for use in perpetuating life's existence, and the purpose ends there. There is no point to it because life wasn't created by a person. The only people who care about purpose are people, because having a purpose or a goal and then working toward it is what the mind does to perpetuate life. There are two directions we can take this dilemma. Either we attempt to live without purpose, or we manufacture a purpose. I recently made a video about fascism where I talk about how that ideology manufactured purpose for its followers, and how that might have actually been a beneficial thing for their self-esteem. Ever since I put this video out, my mind has constantly turned toward this strong appeal of fascism. Imagine believing that you exist to serve the natural hierarchy of your nation and being proud and happy about it. Imagine the wonders that that could do for morale. I think fascism was so successful in part because it just felt so good to be a fascist. Unlike being a miserable doomer socialist who sees no end to the capitalist oppression in his lifetime, but must nevertheless somehow convince himself to get out of bed every day, clock into his wage slavery, and spend the rest of his free time organizing his Sisyphean syndicate so that maybe one day people will actually be able to afford rent again. It's all mind games. That's all life is, really. Life is about staying alive and finding happiness. And then it's over. You never achieve immortality. So why even bother prolonging the inevitable? What is the difference between two expanses of infinite darkness perforated by 20 years of chaos and duality, and two expanses of infinite darkness perforated by 80 years of chaos and duality? Either way, death is oblivion. It would be logical not to fear death, and to be indifferent to its choice of timing. But life isn't logical, because life's prime directive is to perpetuate itself even though there is no compelling reason why life ought to exist at all. Life is based on a form of faith that its self-perpetuation is a good and desired thing. But could we liberate ourselves from this myopic paradigm? Is there a way for us to detach from life altogether? I'm wondering if death is really such a bad thing, or if we just think it's bad because we are biologically hardwired to panic at the thought of obliteration. Can we not see death as the normal state of affairs and life as the exception? Is it okay to have a death wish? To prefer absorption into a non-dual nirvana over the complex entanglements of hormones vying for control over the wrinkles in my brain, while at the same time having to deal with everyone else's crappy, inferior version of the same process, resulting in a system of strained relations and abysmal social organization that drives us all to the drink and the toke? Yes, I think welcoming the sweet release of death might not be so bad after all. The best you can say for life is that it does offer perks that are not on offer in death. The ability to enjoy things and experience satisfaction is delectable. It is, however, a luxury, and one that not everybody can afford. And those who do afford it often only experience it as punctuation in their otherwise dreary existence. Personally, I find that life plunges me into an involuntary asceticism of pleasure. Anything good becomes corrupted with enough exposure. Happiness is not built to last. It is fleeting as life itself. It's funny that it is considered so wrong to prefer death over life, even though many of our world's religions, including Christianity, worship death. In Christianity, life is only just getting started after death. Death is meaningless in Christianity except that it acts as a fulcrum on which one's deeds in life are judged to determine what kind of immortality they will experience. But in it all, there is an implicit denial of the value of life, because everybody who suffers eventually comes to the realization that one life isn't good enough for them. They must be entitled to more. Some people have decided to embrace struggle rather than happiness, and thus become life-affirming rather than life-denying. But personally, I see no value in struggle, and thus I see little valuable in life. Part of me wonders whether this insistence on the value of struggle over happiness is just a coping mechanism for all of life's torments. People recognize that life fundamentally deprives them of what they want the most, happiness. And so they try to find ways to not value happiness as their supreme agenda. When John Green reflected on his experience smoking cigarettes as a teenager, he said that he thinks every teenager who smokes cigarettes on some level has a death wish. It seems humanity itself has a death wish, seeing how it continues to plunge itself further down an impossible chasm of irresponsibility, destroying its own way of life irreparably by polluting the atmosphere with insulating carbons. When I say there is no hope for humanity, this is no hyperbole. This is a scientific fact. Humanity is past the point where it can prevent global disaster, and is going to face some tough moral questions in the coming decades, as scarcity slowly burns the flesh off of this swollen effigy of virtue. At this point, why should we even care? When the rest of the world is so dead set on killing itself, why should we stay their hands? What does it benefit us to care about a species that doesn't even care about itself? Can you see how nothing can be a suitable alternative to something? Can you see how death can be better than life? This is not about suicide. No normal person commits suicide unless life becomes unbearable, and I have a few miles yet to plunge before my life perpetuation instinct turns against itself. And in fact, I have slowly been climbing out of that hole for a few years now. But the amount of effort and exertion it takes to lessen my burden by such small quantities can only make me long for death's sweet embrace. And is that such a bad thing after all?